Throughout your career, you've been in clubs that have the habit of winning, but also clubs that maybe have struggled in the opposite direction and don't have that culture of we always win every game. When you think about the clubs you've worked in that have that habit of winning, like Celtic did, what is that? Where does that come from, and what does it look like and feel like?
It looks like you walk in every morning with your chest out and your head high, and you're sort of confident in what you're doing. There's a motivation to keep it going, not to let it drop. There's something about having to continue to improve to stay at the top, that you can't just do what you're doing, which is going to keep you there forever. You have to keep trying to find a way of doing it. So I did see that, and I feel that, and I've seen it at other clubs since. But I have to say, I think on the journey to probably where I am today is probably more that seeing a lot of the other side as well is actually the bit which, you know, I've been at clubs where I've been getting relegated. I've been at clubs where I can't win. I've been at clubs where, you know, it's not going well. I've been at clubs where there's, you know, it's not been as powerful as say a club like Celtic. So I think you have to see it all round for you to give yourself the best chance. And I keep saying, as you know, to get to become a football manager, I don't think there's any one plan. You could be the best player on the planet and not become a football manager. You could be someone who's never played the game and become incredibly successful as a football manager. So I don't think there's necessarily one way you do it.
I'm really intrigued by this idea of like cultures at clubs and within teams, and how you can just feel it almost when a club has that momentum and they're a winning team, and when they don't. On the contrary, then, when we're thinking about teams that are struggling and that aren't performing well, what are the signs of that? Now, Rio said something really interesting. Was it Rio? Was it Gary Neville said something interesting to me? He said that when he was at Manchester United, Sir Alex Ferguson only came into the training ground dressing room twice. And he said he never needed to come in there because the culture was in there.
Yeah.
So if like when Berbatov came over and wasn't fitting the culture, the players would correct him.
Yeah.
He then says when he went to QPR, when the manager left the changing room, everyone was talking about their wages and where they're going next. You can feel that, like...
Yeah, there is a difference. I actually think the culture, I mean, that team what you're talking about at Manchester United, we had incredible players, and I wouldn't say self-made because they had a great manager, but if you look now, if I moved to just now, I'd be saying there's much more communication in life now. I came from a background where it was really tough, the Scottish managers, probably the working background we came from, they would be out screaming at you at half time, they'd be screaming at you at the end of the game, they would be after you if you didn't do well. I don't think that culture's there, and I think it's changed completely in Scottish managers. And if you look about Scottish managers, probably over history, Scotland had lots of managers in the English Premier League, for example. Very few now. And it might be that we're having to change your culture. So going back to a little bit what you're talking about, Rio said, getting in it there, I think there was a period where the players looked after themselves, or they could take the hard-hitting hairdryer treatment, if you want to call it that. Now I think it's a completely different culture now, whether we've changed or whether I feel as if management is not necessarily in that form. I don't know, maybe you, Steve, you tell me even better. You're head of businesses. Would you go in and be screaming blue murder at your staff now?
Do you know what? The thing, actually I think it's an advantage, is I didn't grow up in that culture.
Yes.
So I've never known it. I've never known the prospect of like coming into work and like, whereas you hear about it in some old businesses where like the CEO would come in and throw things and throw the table over and stuff.
Yeah.
I just never grew up in that environment. I grew up in a sort of a societal expectation that a manager is like, might be tough and sometimes, but is fairly nice.
Yeah.
There's no like big glass office that I sit in away from my team members. It's a different world these days. As you were talking about there, you said that it's kind of a different world in management. You've been in, the job since you were, I guess, 20, in your early 20s. You're 59 now?
I'm 59, and I've probably been in management since I was early 30s or when I started, and then...
So 25, 30 years, you talk about the change that you've seen in the approach that is effective now. What is effective now? If once upon a time Scottish managers could come in and hairdryer it and scream at whatever, how is the approach changed in your view?
Well, let me tell you, I remember one of the managers coming in to the dressing room, And I always said is, don't look up. Just look at the floor, look at your boots, look down, because if you catch his eyes, he's going to come for you. So it used to be, don't look up, so that he couldn't have any eye contact with you, and you had to, you know, and you'd probably put your head in a towel so that he couldn't see you, and because that was the way it was. It was that. And I think that I probably had a lot of that in me when I first started. But the difference now is I think we're in a different, and maybe yourself, and maybe you'll understand, it's a different era. So as a coach and as a manager and as a man now, I think you need to find a way of how you're moving on with that, or you'd be left behind. And I've got to say, I think in my position, I've got to admit, I have to keep trying to keep up, renew, invest in more work, or find out how it's going on. There's so many new things. And that, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that I've still not got the bit of anger in me when I think the players need it. And I actually think that, I think they like it. I think sometimes they like it. I think people want to be told the truth. And I think one of the worst things you can do to people is I think if you keep praising people all the time, I think it makes you soft as well. So I think there's a level of praise you can give people, but I think you've also got to be really tough with your praise as well. And I actually think that as I've got older, I've become better in giving praise. I think there's some of my players, I'm sure at Everton, would say that I very rarely gave them praise because I was always looking for better from them.
You know, over the last, I've been in business, 10 years or something. Not as long as you in terms of management, but even I've started to notice some like warning signs in people. So like if I see this in the interview process, I go, well, I saw this before and then it ended in this way. Kind of like pattern recognition.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about, and I've read a lot about your scouting process, how you find great talent, great players. What are the things you look for in the things that you consider to be warning signs?
I always wanted someone who I thought was putting in effort.
Okay.
I always thought that, and they might say, well, how can that come in front of many other things? Well, I can think of many, probably you, and you'll think of plenty of schoolboys, friends who were really talented players, but maybe weren't dedicated, didn't put in the effort didn't do the work. I think if you don't put the effort in, the dedication to it, then. And the other thing what I use a lot is, you know, if you don't love the game completely, then you'll probably find it really difficult. I think you'll find it really difficult to become a manager if you don't love the game or have real longevity. I think you could be a player and maybe get through your career 10, 15 years as a player without loving football. But I think if you want to go longer, I think you've badly got to love the business. When I became manager of Everton, but I did it before, I used to always meet the players, and I still do if I can. You nearly wanted to see their eyes, to see, I need you to work hard. I'm needing you to know to do this job for the team. I'd like to see, are you going to take that? I'm going to be critical of you and I want you to get better. Are you happy with it? You nearly wanted to put the questions over to them to see if they were going to take it.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favour. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.